The twin suns of Varos burned high over the city of Arcanus, their light glinting off the towering spires of alien metal. Beneath those spires stretched the marketplace, a place of color and noise, but also sorrow. It was called the Marketplace of Chains, for here the Carnath Empire sold the people it had conquered. Rows of beings stood in shackles, each one a life reduced to property. Among them stood a human. His name was Kalen, a warrior from Earth, though few in this far corner of the galaxy even knew the name of his world. He was broad-shouldered, his face marked by battles he refused to forget. The Carnath guards had tried to break him, through hunger, through punishment, through endless hours of silence, but his eyes still carried fire. The crowd gathered near him with curiosity, for humans were rare here. Stories had spread. Humans resisted chains longer than most, and this one, they said, had fought even when defeat was certain. On the platform beside him stood another captive, an alien woman named Lyra of the Terrians. Her skin shimmered faintly with a silver hue, and her large eyes reflected both intelligence and quiet sadness. The Terrians were known as thinkers, builders of great machines and healers of minds. Yet here she was, bound in iron bands, her long hair dulled with dust. Unlike Kalen, she did not glare at the crowd. She watched, calm and silent, as though her thoughts traveled beyond the chains around her wrists. The Carnath merchant shouted loudly, his voice booming across the square. "Here stands the human warrior, strong, fearless, and unbroken. A fine servant for your arena, your mines, or your armies." He tugged at Kalen's chain, forcing him to step forward. Kalen did not bow. He kept his back straight, his eyes scanning the crowd. He saw reptilian faces with scales of bronze, insectoid eyes that glittered like gems, and avian creatures with wings folded behind their cloaks. All came to bargain for lives. The merchant pulled Lyra forward next. And here a Tyrian, skilled in knowledge, useful for craft or counsel. Together, they are valuable. Bid now before the Empire takes them elsewhere, the crowd murmured. Some were eager, some cautious. A few laughed, saying that humans and Tyrians would not work well together. One was all strength, the other all thought. But Kalen turned, his gaze meeting Lyra's. For a moment, the noise of the marketplace faded. In her eyes he saw something different. Not surrender, not despair, but a quiet spark. The merchant shoved him, demanding that he kneel. Instead, Kalen did something unexpected. He spoke, not in the Carnath tongue, but in the trade language known across many worlds. His voice was strong, carrying across the platform. "I choose her." The merchant frowned, confused. The crowd stirred. Slaves were not supposed to choose anything, Kalen repeated louder this time. He raised his hand and pointed at Lyra. "If I must serve, then I serve beside her." "We stand together," the crowd gasped. Some laughed in disbelief. A Carnath guard struck him with the butt of a staff, but Kalen did not fall. His voice carried again, stubborn and clear. "I will not bend alone." Lyra's eyes widened. She had not expected this human stranger to speak for her, yet she felt a flicker of warmth. For months she had been silent, her spirit fading under the Empire's cruelty. But now someone stood with her. The merchant, though angry, saw an opportunity. "Very well. You hear him, buyers? The human warrior will not go without the Tyrian woman. Then let them be sold together. Twice the value, twice the strength." Bidding began, voices calling numbers, the clink of credits echoing. But Kalen hardly heard them. He turned his head slightly, speaking low so only Lyra could hear. "Do not give up. There is still a way." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then quietly she answered, "You speak as though hope can be chosen." Kalen gave the smallest of smiles, though his hands remained bound. "It can," the bidding ended. A wealthy trader of the Empire's colonies claimed them both. Chains were locked tighter, and they were led away toward a transport ship. Around them the marketplace continued, voices rising, lives bought and sold, sorrow hidden beneath the noise of commerce. As the ship's doors closed, Kalen leaned close to Lyra. "They think they own us," he whispered. "But we are more than chains. We will find a way." For the first time in many months, Lyra allowed herself a small breath of hope. The human was reckless, yes, but there was strength in him that the Carnath had not broken. Perhaps together they could become more than slaves. And so, in the heart of the marketplace of chains, under the burning suns of Varos, the first spark of defiance was lit. The transport ship rumbled as it cut through the blackness of space. Inside its metallic belly, Slaves were locked in rows of cages. The air smelled of oil, dust, and fear. Kalen sat with his back against the wall, chains still binding his wrists. Across from him sat Lyra, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The Karnath guards marched down the narrow walkway, their boots striking the floor like drums. One stopped and glared at Kalen. "Human," he barked. "Still proud?" "You will break in the mines." Kalen gave no answer. He only stared back with calm fire in his eyes. The guard scowled, muttered a curse in his tongue, and moved on. When the footsteps faded, Kalen leaned closer to Lyra. "Where are they taking us?" he asked softly. She lifted her head, her voice calm. "The records I saw at the market showed a route to Valor 9, a mining colony. The Empire drains it for metal. Few leave alive." Kalen nodded. His fists tightened. "Then we will not stay long." Lyra studied him. "You speak of escape, but chains do not break by will alone." "The Karnath are not careless." Kalen gave a small grin. "Then we will not fight alone." The transport landed hours later on Valor 9, a planet of gray dust and endless pits. The sky was thick with smoke from mining machines. The air carried the metallic taste of iron. Slaves were herded from the ship and marched toward barracks made of steel. Kalen walked tall despite his chains, while Lyra's eyes scanned everything: the towers, the guards, the gates. She was already learning the pattern of their prison. Days turned to weeks. Kalen labored in the mines, hauling stone and ore. His body ached, but his spirit did not bend. He noticed the other slaves: insectoid laborers with broken wings, scaled beings with tired eyes, and avian workers whose feathers had lost their shine. They rarely spoke to one another. Each race kept to its own, separated by old mistrust. That was exactly how the Empire wanted it. At night, Kalen sat with Lyra in the dim barracks. "They are broken," he whispered. "But not lost." Lyra shook her head. "They do not believe in each other. To rise, they must first trust." "Then we will give them a reason," Kalen said. The first chance came when a slave collapsed in the mines, too weak to carry his load. The guards moved to strike him, but Kalen stepped forward. "I will carry it," he said. The guards sneered but allowed it. Kalen lifted the heavy crate onto his shoulders and marched forward. The other slaves watched in silence. For the first time, they saw someone risk himself for another. Later, Lyra used her skills. Assigned to repair broken machines, she secretly studied the systems of the mine. Her fingers moved quickly, her eyes sharp. She learned how the gates opened, how the power flowed, how the alarms were triggered. She whispered these secrets to Kalen at night, mapping the skeleton of their prison in her mind. Small acts followed. Kalen distracted guards so others could rest. Lyra tampered with locks so they would be weaker in time of need. Together, they planted seeds of courage. One night, as the barracks settled into silence, Kalen stood and spoke softly to those near him. "The Karnath think we are weak. They think we are broken, but we are not. Together we are stronger than they know." A scaled worker hissed softly. "You are a fool. They will kill us if we resist." Kalen's eyes shone in the dim light. "They will kill us anyway. At least this way we fight," Lyra added, her voice calm but firm. "He is right. I have seen their machines. They are not invincible. If we act with unity, even the Empire can bleed." The barracks grew quiet. Some turned away, afraid, but a few listened. Hope was a dangerous flame, but once lit, it was hard to put out. The next day, when a guard raised his weapon against a young avian worker, Kalen stepped between them. He caught the strike on his shackled arms and refused to move. The guard beat him, but Kalen did not fall. The avian worker stared in shock, then in gratitude. Later, she whispered to others, "The human fights for us." Whispers spread. The slaves began to share food in secret, to cover for each other in the mines. Old divisions softened. Meanwhile, Lyra worked in the machine bay. She left doors slightly open, circuits slightly loose. A guard once asked why alarms tripped so often. She bowed her head and blamed old parts. Inside, she smiled. Each failure was not chance, it was preparation. One evening, Kalen returned from the mines bloodied but unbroken. Lyra tended his wounds with cloth torn from her robe. "You risk too much," she murmured. He gave a tired grin. "And you risk too little." "Together we balance," Lyra's eyes softened. "Strange human. You act without thought, yet somehow it works." "It works," Kalen said, "because we are not alone anymore." Weeks passed. The spark grew. Slaves began to believe in the impossible. When Kalen spoke, they listened. When Lyra gave instructions, they obeyed. A plan was forming, small, careful, but real. One night, Lyra gathered them in whispers. The main gate is powered by a single line. If we strike it at the right time, the system will fail. The alarms will be blind for minutes. Enough to move. Kalen added, when the moment comes, we rise together. No one left behind. The slaves looked at one another. Fear still lived in their eyes, but so did something else. Courage. In the darkness of Velor 9, among the smoke and chains, the first shape of rebellion was born. The Karnath guards still walked with pride, unaware that the ground beneath them was shifting. Kalen sat that night staring at the stars beyond the barred window. They do not see it, he whispered. See what? Lyra asked. That the Empire has already lost, Kalen replied. Because we are no longer afraid. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. She looked out at the stars too. Then let us make them see. And in that moment the spark of defiance grew brighter, ready to burn. The night was thick with tension. Velor 9's mining colony lay under the twin moons, silent except for the low hum of machinery and the distant echo of guards' boots. Kalen moved through the shadows with Lyra by his side. Chains no longer bound them. Though scars remained, they were free in body and spirit. Tonight would decide everything. Kalen paused and whispered, Are all ready? From the dark corners the slaves emerged, scaled, insectoid, avian. They had put aside old fears and grudges. The rebellion was no longer Kalen and Lyra's alone. It belonged to all who had suffered under the Empire. Each carried makeshift weapons, tools repurposed from the mine, and courage born of long oppression. Lyra studied the gate controls one last time. The power line will fail for 6 minutes. Enough to pass, but not more. Timing is everything, Kalen nodded. Then we move at my signal. Inside the mine, guards patrolled lazily, unaware of the storm gathering against them. Kalen counted the steps, the pauses, memorizing every route. Beside him, Lyra's hands danced over a portable interface she had constructed, sending false signals to distract the main system. Sparks flickered, alarms hummed softly, and the gates remained unaware. Now, Kalen's voice was a low roar, carrying authority beyond the fear of any slave. They surged forward, charging through the corridors. Guards shouted, but their shouts were lost in chaos. The slaves moved with surprising precision, each following the plan they had rehearsed in whispers and shadows. Kalen led the first wave. His arm swung with strength, deflecting blows, clearing a path. Behind him, Lyra directed others toward the control hubs. With her guidance, power lines were cut at precise intervals. Machines stopped mid-operation, gates unlocked, and alarms rang hollowly as if mocking the Empire's authority. The Karnath guards regrouped quickly. Their weapons fired, but the rebels were ready. Avian fighters swooped from hidden ledges. Scaled warriors used the tunnels, and insectoid slaves launched themselves with speed no guard could match. The rebellion was not raw chaos. It was strategy shaped by months of planning. Kalen confronted the captain of the guards. A tall Karnath with bronze scales and eyes like molten metal swung his staff. Kalen dodged, then tackled him, their struggle loud and desperate. Behind him, Lyra disabled a turret, the machine clattering to the floor. Together they cleared a path toward the main gate. Outside, the sky seemed alive with movement. Slaves poured into the open, free at last to run toward the landing pads. Sparks from broken machines lit the night like fireflies. The Empire had built walls of metal and fear, but they could not contain the will of the United. Kalen looked around. "Push forward," he shouted. No one left behind. A small group of young slaves hesitated near a damaged corridor. Lyra sprinted to them. "Follow me. You are part of this fight no matter your size." Her voice was calm but urgent. They obeyed, hearts pounding with adrenaline and hope. The final gate loomed ahead, guarded by the captain's elite soldiers. Kalen faced them squarely, his presence like a shield. The rebels moved as one, averting attacks, throwing objects, and shouting. The elite soldiers, trained to strike fear, found themselves overwhelmed by courage and unity they had never faced. Lyra hacked the control console with a practiced hand. Sparks flew as the locks disengaged. The gates shuddered and opened with a grinding sound. A cheer erupted among the slaves. Kalen led the charge through the opening, strength and determination driving him forward. Behind him, Lyra ensured no one was left trapped. The Karnath were forced to retreat. Their soldiers scattered as the slaves, now free in both body and spirit, pursued them to prevent regrouping. Velor 9, once silent under the weight of oppression, now rang with the sounds of victory. On the highest platform, Kalen and Lyra stood together, watching the colony they had freed. Exhausted but unbroken, they looked at each other. The human warrior and the alien woman, once prisoners, had become symbols of hope. "Is it over?" Kalen asked, voice low. "Not entirely," Lyra replied. "The Empire stretches across many worlds. But this colony, this victory will inspire others. Fear can be broken." Kalen smiled faintly. "Then let them see it. Let them know the Empire is not invincible." The freed slaves gathered around them. Avian wings fluttered in excitement. Scaled bodies glimmered under moonlight, and insectoid limbs clicked in a strange rhythm of celebration. Kalen raised his arms, and for a moment the diverse crowd fell silent, listening. "Today," he began, voice carrying over the colony, "we were told we were weak, that we were property, that we would obey, and yet here we stand, free, united, unbroken. Remember this feeling, for it is yours forever." Lyra stepped forward beside him. "The Empire will hear our story. They will see that chains cannot bind the heart. Knowledge, strength, and courage together are unstoppable." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing across the rocky terrain. Kalen and Lyra held hands, a silent promise to one another and to the new world they had begun to build. In the days that followed, the freed slaves repaired the colony, organizing themselves to survive without the Empire's control. They sent messages to nearby systems telling of their rebellion, inspiring others who had long forgotten hope. The Karnath Empire, vast and confident, now had a spark to worry about. A human warrior and a Tyrian woman, once prisoners, had proven that unity and courage could defy even the greatest chains. Across the stars, whispers of rebellion began to spread. Kalen and Lyra often stood on the platforms, gazing at the horizon. Together they had sparked a change that no empire could erase. Their bond, forged in chains, had become a beacon. Kalen spoke quietly, almost to himself. "We were meant to fight, and we did. But the fight has just begun." Lyra's eyes reflected the twin moons above. "Then let us face it together as equals, as friends, as something more than they ever imagined." And so, in the heart of a world that had once been a prison, the human warrior and the alien woman stood tall, symbols of hope, courage, and defiance. Chains had fallen, fear had fled, and freedom had been claimed, not by luck, not by chance, but by the strength of those who refused to bow. In the end, the Empire had learned a simple truth. No matter how vast their power, the will of the united, the brave, and the determined could never be chained. The marketplace of chains had been silenced, but the spark Kalen and Lyra lit would burn across the stars.